Hello everyone, welcome to AnalytixCloud. This is your host Gaurav, and today we will be dealing with a very interesting topic, which is real end-to-end Azure project. Okay, so before I just start with this project, let me introduce yourself. What exactly is AnalytixCloud? So we are three people team working as a part of AnalytixCloud, where we have a mission to help anyone or everyone to get into Azure Data Engineering job. Right. So these days, I can see that there are many people who are working in any other kind of a domain, or either they are non-IT professionals and they want to get a job into data engineering. As we all know that data is booming like anything, right? So we thought of, if we are already working as a data engineer, data architect in different organizations, so why not help people to get job into this, as we are already having enough idea to help people to get into this, right? So that's how we started, and this is the first video that we are rolling it out, where we will be discussing about real end-to-end Azure project. We are majorly focusing on Azure stack as of now. Okay, so going through this video, you will have a fair understanding like what exactly problem statement that a data engineer solves. What are the different type of resources that could be required in Azure in order to perform some kind of a data extraction, transformation, loading. We will be getting to know later, right? And what kind of a problem statement that basically a data engineer solves, right? So in this, through going through this series of video, you'll have a fair understanding of a end-to-end project, so that you can also put these projects into your resume. And that okay, so let us start with the problem statement first. Okay, so this is a project architecture that you are seeing in front of your screen. Okay, I will be explaining you each and every objects that we can see here. But first, in like before getting into this, let us just understand a real-time problem statement that we dealt with. Okay, so let's see if I talk about one use case that we were having, which was regards to the oil and gas industry company. Okay, so that use cases came from this some oil and gas company. Okay, so what the requirement was that they were having different teams across, right? So in their businesses there will be different teams, like there will be some engineering team who will be responsible for building drawings of the plant that they will be making. I'm just going some into business specific details. Okay, so there will be some engineering team who will be building some kind of a plant. So in order to build the plant in some kind of location, they might need some 3D software where they will be designing those plants. So then there will be a procurement team. So once the engineering teams build the plan, there will be some materials that is required in order to build that plant, right? So that information is sent to the procurement team. So let's keep it here. Let's say we have, first of all, engineering team, right? So let's say here engineering team, what will happen is, let's say this is some oil and gas industry company, either it is some Indian Oil or it is Shell or anything. Like let's say uh, they figured it out. Okay, this there is a part of a land where they can dig it out, and they can build a plant where, in order to extract oil from it. Okay, so in order to build this plant, there will be some 3D softwares that will be coming. So this engineering team will be using this 3D software in order to build that plant in this location. Okay, so once they build this 3D diagram, they will get all those materials that will be required in order to build those plants. So that material list that they will be preparing, they will be sharing it to the other team, which is the procurement team. Okay, so we will be having a procurement team which will be taking those material list that they have got from here from the engineering team, and then they will be asking all different types of suppliers that they have, okay, in their databases. They will be sending that, okay, boss, I need all of these materials. May I know what will be the price of those materials, and by when you can send us these materials. So basically it will ask them for a kind of a quotation. Okay, so so that is basically the work of the procurement team. Once they'll get a quotation, they will be fixing some suppliers. Okay. Then once the supplier is fixed, then those products that was ordered will be shipped, right? So there will be some shipping and some kind of a logistics team. All right. So basically, if you could see here, this is a typical scenario of a supply chain where how exactly it works. Like there will be an engineering team, there will be a procurement team, there will be a shipping team, right? So in order to perform any kind of a analysis, first of all, we would be needing as a data engineer all the data from the engineering team, from the procurement team, and from the shipping team, right? So once we have all of these data from different teams like engineering team, procurement team, shipping team, once we have all of this data into one single place, okay, then let's say that single place, if we'll combine all these three data, we have this single source of truth. And this single source of truth could be used further to be utilized across different teams in order to analyze this data, right? In order to analyze this data, perform some kind of a transformations, right? Transformations, or to build any reports on this data, which could be uh, seen to the customers, to the users, business people basically. Okay, so this is an overall process that a typical oil and gas industry follows. Okay, so we as a data engineer, we got this problem statement, right? That we need a single source of truth. We need to do some kind of a transformations, and then we finally need to show some kind of a report to the users, right? Let's say if I'll just give you a few examples of the report that it could have. Let's say if we can have different kind of a suppliers, right? Like what like let's say it has here, if you'll see, we have multiple suppliers, right? So which will be the good suppliers for any product. Let's say if the company wants to buy copper, okay, so there could be multiple suppliers who will be selling copper, copper wire, let's say, right? So let's say in the report that we are generating, we can just put, okay, the business people can just put, okay, what are the item that is needed to purchase. It will be a copper, so it will just give us which suppliers are the best to who can sell the coppers, right? So any kind of data that that we can get it from this single source of truth that we have put, so that we can analyze it and we can build any kind of a report to get all these kind of informations, right? So that's what is basically end-to-end process of a supply chain in oil and gas industry company. Okay, so let's come to our problem statement as a data engineer, where we want to have different data sources into one single source of truth, correct? So here, if you could see, we have different sources mentioned, right? So let's say we have SAP as a source, we have SQL Server as a source, there might be some SFTP or SharePoint location as a source, or it could be any data lake storage as a source, right? So we have multiple sources, and let's say some team, let's say engineering team might be using this sources, procurement team might be using this source for the data, some team could be using the SFTP, like shipping team. So we can see that there could be a case where there will be a lot of different sources that might be used across different teams, right? So we would need to integrate all these sources into one platform, so that from using that one platform, if we'll integrate to all these different various sources, then we can get that data from those sources, right? So this is where Azure Data Factory comes in into the picture. Okay, so this, if you could see, is nothing but Azure Data Factory. Okay, so Azure Data Factory is responsible for end-to-end, uh, like you could say, operations. Like basically, it is responsible for data extraction, like E as an extraction, data transformations, and then data loading. So we'll just cover all these three topics separately. Okay. So data extraction, what does this means? So basically, if you'll see here, what we are doing is we are having different sources, right? We are trying to extract data from these sources and trying to load it into somewhere. So let's say we are trying to load this data from these sources into a raw layer or raw format which we have created, which is in some kind of a storage. Here this is depicting ADLS, Let's say in our use case, we will be storing the data into ADLS Gen 2. Okay, so that's what is called as data extraction. From here, extracting the data, and then currently we are loading the data here. We are not doing any transformation here. If in between, like extracting the data and while loading, if we in between, if we do any kind of a modification to data, that will lead to the transformation of the data, and that is the ETL operations. So Azure Data Factory is something which will be responsible for doing end-to-end ETL operation. Okay, so here if you'll see what we are doing is using Azure Data Factory, we are pulling all of these data. We will be ingesting all this data into ADLS Gen 2. Okay, so once we have all this data into ADLS Gen 2, let's say ADLS Gen 2, let's say we just created let's say three folders, which could be like engineering folder, then we have procurement folder, then let's say we have shipping folder based on each uh, processes that we have, right? And in this folder we have data, we have data, we have data. So this data could be coming either from SAP, this coming from SQL, this coming from CSV or Excel, right? We are storing it. So this data that we are storing here is exact replica of the data that we are getting from the sources. We are not modifying anything as not even a single thing that we are changing here, right? So that we are keeping it as a raw data. Now, uh, according to the Medallion architecture that we have, basically, we will be discussing more about architectures in our coming video. Okay, so here if you'll see, we have three different layers. One is the bronze layer, one is silver layer, and this is our final layer, which is the gold layer. Okay, so once we have the entire data into our raw layer, we are using Azure Databricks. Okay, so this is what you could see is Azure Databricks. Okay, so we can call this Azure Databricks notebook through ADF. Okay, so this ADF pipeline, if you could see all of these things like extracting the data from sources, then ingesting it in the raw, then bronze layer, then silver layer, then gold layer, everything is taken care from the ADF. Okay, through Azure Data Factory. So in Azure Data Factory, we are creating the pipeline which will take care of all of these stuff. So here if you'll see in Azure Data Factory itself, we will be calling our notebook activity, which will be pointing to Azure Databricks, which will be reading the data from the source, which is the raw layer, and loading it into the bronze layer. Okay, so first of all, it will load the data into bronze layer. Let's say now we have the data into the bronze layer. It could be we could have any kind of a modifications or any kind of simple logic transformations like let's say we might get some of the data which could be null, so we can replace those null values, then we can put some default values, or any kind of a small modifications that we do in the data. So anyways, we will cover this into our next video. We will be doing practical by taking the data from different sources and doing some basic and loading into the raw and doing some basic transformation. We will show you how we are storing the data into the branch. Like right, once we into the branch, we also have an option to archive the data so that it could be archived so that business could use it later. Or if we also have an option if this got deleted, we have an archival there in the process, right? So we have those as a branch layer. Now let's say we want to have further modification or further transformation required in order to enrich that data. So we will be again doing that transformation in Azure Databricks, and then we will be finally loading into the silver layer basically. So the silver layer will be again kind of a delta table that we will be creating. Okay, so we'll have a delta table. And then once we have the data into the silver layer, the final transformations that we will be doing in the Databricks and the clean and the curated data, that is the final data, which is the gold data, will be stored in the gold layer, right? So once we have the data into the gold layer, that means we now have the clean and the curated data, which could be used in a Power BI in order to generate any kind of reports, right? This is the place where we have all the clean data which could be utilized across different teams, right? to create those reports. So in our coming video, we'll be doing practical on all of these stuffs, saving this data into the into the gold layer, and then finally building a Power BI dashboard and show you how exactly the data uh, looks in the Power BI. How so basically, once we are once you'll get to know each and everything that is coming here in this end-to-end project, you'll have a fair understanding of how exactly these activities work, what are the challenges that a data engineer faces, and how do we orchestrate this pipeline. Let's say we want to run this pipeline on a daily basis or a weekly basis or a monthly basis. So how can we do that, right? So that's it for today. uh, we will be coming with the next video where we will be explaining you the practical of all of these that we had today, right? So we had a very good informative sessions today where we learned how basically oil and gas industry supply chain company works, and why do they have a different sources, because they have a different teams, right? How do we integrate those sources into Azure Data Factory? How do we load those data, like extract those data and load it into ADLS? And then why do we use Azure Databricks notebook? And then how we are loading the data into bronze, silver, and gold layer, right? And why are these components used, correct? So in our coming videos, we will be going into much detail, and we will be doing the practicals where we'll be taking some sample data where we will be from different sources. We will be loading it through Azure Data Factory into ADLS. We will be using Azure Databricks notebook so that we'll do some transformations and load it into bronze, then silver, and then gold layer. And then we will be finally building a report in the Power BI where from which we'll be taking the data from the gold layer, right? So you'll have a fair understanding of how exactly this business problems gets usually solved by a data engineer, right? So I hope you'd have liked this video. We will come with more informative videos very soon. Okay, so stay tuned, and if you like our channel, please do subscribe. Thank you.